everybody, and welcome to the media show on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Palavito. I'll be your moderator for today's show. And today's show, we're going to be discussing the Facebook, which you may have heard of before, now known as Meta. So Facebook's going to be up for grabs here. And with that, let's bring our panel in from Southern California, a former member of the Mega Society, current member of the Mega Society, former writer for Jimmy Kimmel Live. Let's bring in Rick Rosner. Rick, welcome to the media show. Facebook's going to be up today, which is in Northern California. But we also have another person in Southern California, and we're going to bring him in because he knows a lot more about the media than I do, and that is David Grasso. David, I assume you're still in Southern California, but I'm not sure.
So this background is Miami, but I'm actually in San Francisco now. So,
man, you're in the world of Meta, I guess.
Yeah, I'm between Florida and San Francisco, but yeah, I'm just an hour away from the headquarters right here.
Good, because I have some questions for my friend who's at Zuckerberg about this. And our own Pod TV expert who has over 100 years of broadcast experience and maybe can help us with this problem. We'll bring in Mark Lee, who is always the person to ask the questions. And I don't know the answer to that. So we're going to start with Facebook because Facebook has been, let's put it this way, an issue I've had for many years. And recently I had a group of, and you've had experience with Facebook too, David. Okay, so I heard you're pleased and you can bring back your story for the listeners. But I had a page on Facebook with 4,000 of my relatives, et cetera. And then they said, you violated your terms of service. Okay, fine. Tell me what it is. And then they destroyed my 4,000 followers, all my relatives, and my whole Facebook page got shut down. Boom. Okay, so I created another Facebook page, started getting people back on. And of course, Mark knows we broadcast through Facebook. We tell people we do it. Last week, they shut down all my broadcasts. Again, no reasons, just shut them all down. And I'm going like, why? Why are we getting punished all the time if you work or you try to work with Facebook? So that's kind of like the issue that I had, but you have your own story with Facebook now known as Meta. Now, what we're doing behind the scenes is we're actually reverse engineering Facebook. Okay, putting together all the plugins, et cetera. We're going to have our own, what I call it, social media page soon. In other words, it's already under beta test. We're still playing with it, but we're going to have basically our own Facebook because it's kind of a chintzy thing. It's cheap to do now, and it's chintzy. The technology isn't that hard. Only because, part of the main reason Pod TV exists, and we had last year 2.3 million views, is because of PBS. PBS is impossible to work with. So we create our own broadcasting. Now Facebook's impossible to work with. So we're just going to create our own social media site. Anyway, tell us your story, David. I know you have a good one with your friends at Meta, otherwise known as Facebook. What happened with
Facebook? So Facebook has kind of done the whole life cycle at this point. So originally, back when Bold TV started, which is the media nonprofit that I lead today, back then it was a for-profit. And basically in the mid-teens, we're talking around 2014, 2015, there was a big bubble in digital content. And really that bubble was led by social media and what Facebook, as it was known back then, and they owned Instagram at the time, but it was very small. They encouraged journalists to really hitch their wagons to their platform. And it wasn't just Facebook, it was really across the industry. It was so absurd back then that you were even encouraged to not have a website. Just get a Medium page, just get a Facebook page. So basically you were dependent on a bunch of third parties in order to get your content out there. And that went swell until about, right around the 2016 election around there. And, there were a lot of issues around the 2016 election, like Cambridge Analytica, privacy issues, et cetera. And social media companies, not just Facebook, now known as Meta, started to step back and really cut off access to news brands, especially smaller news brands. And they started picking, specific news brands that they felt were reliable. And there is a rational basis for this because disinformation in their minds and in the minds of Americans started to become a huge issue. Of course, there's a whole subgenre of what is disinformation and what isn't that we can leave for another day. But for brevity here, let's focus on what happened next. What happened next is that all these brands started going through what you're going through, Nick. And in fact, Bold TV was one of those. Our views went from millions down to statistically zero, and it basically bankrupted the brand. I came in and took a nonprofit, but our Facebook following never really recovered. Then we went through a different issue of social media, which became pay to play. And basically, it was okay, we're not going to give you free access. But if you pay a nominal fee, and it was fairly affordable, we're going to give you access to your old audience. And that lasted a few years. And now we've arrived at the last destination, which is there are new laws in Australia and Canada that are demanding that social media pay for news. So they're just cutting off access to news. And if you look at what Twitter, now X, has gone through, what all the platforms are going through, they are just legitimately not interested in touching news anymore, which is a dramatic reversal from where it was 8 years ago. So that is the full life cycle, from free to pay to now, no thanks.
Hey, David, just really quickly, because they're not the only ones that has gone through some changes. The last time you were on, I was talking about Clubhouse, and I know that Clubhouse has gone through all kinds of changes left and right. They've gone from house, they've gone through a number of other things as well. So I was wondering, is this part of the kind of ways that we are seeing with social media, that they get you hooked, and then after they get you hooked, they start changing the rules internally? Because I know a number of folks that are still happy on Clubhouse. I still go there on occasion myself, but I do know a lot of folks who are getting frustrated by this whole notion of houses and some of the other things that they have put into place, including some of the things that they've done with their moderators or not done with their moderators. So some of the moderators might need to be put in timeout and all along those lines. But I just wondered your thoughts around this new model and whether that plays into the conversation that is also going on with Facebook. Because I'm thinking that this could be another example of folks seeing the opportunity and then wanting to change the rules midstream.
Yeah, so, I'm not the biggest defender of Meta, Facebook, whatever you want to call it, but I think in this instance, I think it's just the least cost avoider and the lowest risk for them. Trafficking in news and opinion is very risky, as Elon Musk is now learning by owning X. And I think this is not on purpose. They're not cutting people off like Pod TV on purpose. It's just kind of what they're legal telling them, and it's strategy for them. And this really hits at the crux of a conversation of what is freedom of speech. And we really have to parse out two issues, right? There should be freedom of speech on these platforms, but there's also freedom of reach. And in the past, what we've learned about these platforms is that they spread outrage. And that's what we really should be talking about, is about freedom of reach and amplifying voices instead of, banning certain people. But here's the problem. There's a very tenuous balance with this, and this isn't even an opinion in a place like Germany, as Elon Musk has been tweeting or Xing lately. This is the law, right? Here in the United States, you can say whatever you want, but in other places like the UK, like Germany, and most countries around the world, these social media platforms have to follow the law. And in the European Union, they have to be really, really careful about what they're doing. So this is a tenuous balance. So while I believe in the past that Meta was very unfair to journalists, and I'm included in that bunch, right now I just feel like they're just trying to survive in this new regulatory environment.
So 2 weeks ago, Twitter, now X, had an explosion of anti-Semitism, which I don't love because I'm Jewish. And it's, Elon Musk has been saying that he's, bringing back freedom, and along with freedom comes these waves of BS and also hate, and it's a problem.
I guess to tie into what Rick is talking about, and ask the question around that balance that you're asking for, and then talking about the parsing out, because how do we, delineate for people that freedom of speech that we talk about in the States is dealing with the government itself. And these companies themselves have their user agreements and user rights. And if you go against their code of conduct, that's not a problem of freedom of speech, more so than it is a problem of breaking the code of conduct. So how do we, just as Rick was talking about, the explosion of anti-Semitism that jumped on Twitter, the same thing, the N-word became one of the biggest words on Twitter as well. So how do we take one of these giant entities such as Elon and how he's trying to do this whole freedom thing, which is also fake because he blocks people and tries to kick people off of Tesla and all the other stuff, but just for saying bad things about him. So that's not really freedom, but he's pushing this whole freedom thing. How do we not make Twitter the next giant 4chan? How do we avoid those things?
That's really difficult. If you have the answer to that, I'm sure you can make $1 billion because everyone's wondering the same thing, right? And you're absolutely right. When you sign up for a platform, it's like being in a private building, right? You can't walk into a private building and, start harassing people and then say it's freedom of speech. So we can imagine the same phenomenon in the digital world. On the other hand, a lot of brands these days are making a name for themselves because some brands have gone too far in banning too many voices, right? So you have whole brands like search engines like DuckDuckGo, alternative social media networks that are popping up because of perceived censorship, right? So it's a difficult balance, right? What is freedom? And every case is different. And in a lot of cases, AI is fielding this. And of course, that has its own bias. And then number two, a lot of people in India and abroad are the ones that you're dealing with, Nick, specifically when you get banned, et cetera. And, they don't understand all the nuances of our society. So yeah, this is a really difficult issue to solve. It's very costly for these social media platforms. And more importantly, it's a huge regulatory risk, not really in the United States, but definitely outside of the United States.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well,
David,
I'll say
I'm
our
the
only
same-
response, go on, Mark, but our only response to that, David, was this when we first got started, is we were not going to rely on any one distribution source for our viewership. So we broadcast through LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble. We own our own Roku channel, and we also own our own Roku Live channel, which I found out a lot of people don't know how to do that. So we have an OTT platform and 4 live channels. So we did as multiple distribution sources. So not one can shut us down. If we relied solely on Facebook as a distribution source, we'd be out of business years ago because of how they operate. They do tend to, for whatever reason, kill our programming that goes through Facebook. And I don't know why they do it, but they just do that. But then again, from a legal standpoint, they have a right to do it because, like what you just said, you're on their private property. So we're on their property. We know that. And they can throw us off at any time, which they do. But frankly, what Facebook users don't know, they are all on Facebook property. It's anybody who's on Facebook's on Facebook property. And if Mark doesn't like you, Mark can throw you off the boat at any point in time. And that's just
I
the
like
reality.
everybody. I like everybody.
Yeah,
But one of the quick questions I had for
the immense amount of power in the media that's concentrated in your new city, David, San Francisco. Headquarters of Twitter, headquarters of Meta. I mean, so when you're seeing a media shift, you're seeing it to your city of San Francisco, where they're controlling they can literally dictate the terms and conditions of this election coming up, whether they know it or not. Yeah, Rick.
It's a problem for every social medium because on the one hand, you don't want to censor people. On the other hand, for thousands of trolls, it's fun to say burn the Jews or to say the N-word. If you're like some 13-year-old, antisocial kid, you can just say horrible stuff and then people go crazy and you kind of love it. And
well, then take into account how we're going. AI is huge. AI, you can create bots have been around for a long time on every social media platform.
Yeah.
But now with the advent of AI and how that's coming along and it all gets back to that balance. How do you censor somebody knowing that it may be a bot? And then, okay, for example, the young lady who was supposedly a Democrat that was on Twitter saying all this stuff, she had millions of followers. And then she got found out that they took a picture and the name of some young lady, I think she was in Texas, who was some Republican. and she really hated it. But then when they found that out, they blocked her. How do you go
They
about that?
stole her identity. They stole
Yeah.
her image to
And
be
that happens
a
regularly.
fake Democrat. Yeah.
And it's
Hey,
not
David,
even.
just really,
Oh,
yeah,
go
I'm
ahead,
just
Mark.
curious, David. Yeah, David, I'm just curious because one of the things that I've seen Facebook grab you for, and all along those lines, and it's a legitimate complaint because folks want to get their just dues and all in that space. So yes, they have taken us off for viewpoints, meaning things that were deemed to be not correct in the sense of COVID views or views on different political views, whether it's around Ukraine, Russia, or a number of other things. But another thing that has gotten folks off the or shows off the air has been, and we try to run a banner that lets folks know that this is not necessarily our music and that it is that we are not using it for any commercial purposes and all along those lines. But I have noticed in the past, watching some old Bolt episodes and everything, that you sometimes would have music incorporated. So how did you get around that? Was it just that banner that we've been running, or what did you do? Because that is what has bumped a few shows that are still on the network as well as some that have not on the network anymore. But I do know that there was that whole musical conversation. And like I said, I've watched some of your shorts and I do know they have musical interludes sometimes. So I was just wondering how you got around that on occasion.
We haven't. And it's not just, I'm a prolific media person. I advise much bigger brands than my own, and I have control over their Facebook pages. And the number one push we get is you're violating some sort of term. And the funny thing about that is a lot of times I get a push, an hour later saying, oops, you're not violating that term. So it is the wild, wild west out there, especially as it pertains to using music, footage, et cetera, and copyright. And again, this is a regulatory and legal issue. And I really think that's why Meta is getting tired of accommodating news brands, because it's a nightmare. Even as a small brand that I've been running for 3 or 4 years now, we get sued all the time by trolls for using photos that were allegedly free. The regulatory environment and the legal system is very hostile to media startups, as you're learning, Nick, and everyone in this room is learning. And even the big guys have to deal with this. Help me, Nick. What is it? DMCA or whatever?
Yeah.
Someone help me. Yeah, where you rip off music allegedly. And a lot of times,
Right.
the music we use, the photos we use, we have best practices around content creation. We do not purposefully rip off anything. We go through the whole process, and then a year later, as Mark is mentioning, it's like, oh, wait, yeah, this is wrong. So we're going to mute your video. And your video essentially becomes useless.
Yeah.
And
What we've done for the most part, David, is we don't run music and we don't run any other content except our speakers content. So, and that kind of like eliminates it. Now, in some respects, well, then your videos aren't that good, your shows aren't that good. Well, too bad. We're not going to run music. I don't know. Toby does Gamers Den, but I don't know.
That actually, in the gaming world,
mentioned
that gets hit a lot, just because in the background of different video games. Take for instance, a lot of NBA 2K24 just dropped. That has a lot of big time stars, rap artists to pop artists that put their music on there. And a lot of the streamers, as soon as they go online with that game, luckily some of the gaming companies have caught on and said that there's a streaming mode, but even still, not a lot of games have that streaming mode on there. So a lot of these gamers end up with getting hit by Twitch, Facebook, all the companies muted. Like I had played a game called Alan Wake. Alan Wake is a beautiful game. You wouldn't think that would get hit, but it has some old-timey music in the background because it's a noir style game. And and I didn't realize that it was there. But during the breaks going to the next chapter of the actual game, yeah, it gets muted. I get hit, and then that video is stuck there just silent for people, and they don't understand what's going on. But yeah, in the gaming world, it's big. Twitch, when that came out, that took a lot. There were tons of streamers that got hit with this, where their old catalogs that they had saved for years, and they were videos on demand, and that's how they were making their money. I mean, you're talking about streamers that had millions of followers that were making millions of dollars, lost their whole back catalog in an instant, because once that lawsuit started coming through, Yeah, it was bad.
And it varies, because one of the things that happens is that if the company feels that they are gaining something, then they're not really going to press back on you and all along those lines. Now, if they feel that it is turning out to be derogatory toward them, then we could get some pushback. Like, we have a show on the air that exists that is pretty much a in a lot of ways, and I can say this fairly because I don't think that Cindy would disapprove of me saying, but in a lot of ways, it's an infomercial for the cruise industry. So yes, we do borrow some of their existing public commercials and all along those lines, but we haven't gotten no pushback from Carnival or Princess or anything, because in their mind, that's a free commercial. I'm sure that you've seen other people do that as well, David, where they will find these commercials, because a lot of them are in the public domain, and if they feel that they are gaining something, even if it's only 2 customers, they're not going to really push back. Now, if she starts talking about Carnival and its horrible aspects, or if it's doing something wrong, then there might be some pushback at that point and everything. But as long as it's basically amounting to an infomercial for them, then there's not really going to be much pushback, because it's just showing where they are going, where the trips are, and the benefits of the industry and everything.
I think
So
we have to
one
hit
problem
very-
is
Say
how
what?
fast.
Sorry, go ahead, Rick, please.
All right. So one problem is how fast everything has to happen. You got to get your product to market. You got to get your social medium to market. If you're a streamer, you've got to start streaming you playing the brand new game. And the problems, it's like jumping into bed with somebody, and then you start meeting their family. You jump into bed with Twitter, and then you find out that their family that consists of a bunch of anti-Semites and people who love to say the N-word. It's people have Facebook, unsustainable business model. The writer Cory Doctorow calls it enshittification, where you invite everybody in, 1 billion people jump onto Facebook, and then Facebook's like, oh, okay, we've got these problems, and we have to start addressing them, and the new limitations are unsatisfactory.
You were going to say something, David, about the very...
Yeah, I think and this isn't just about the media. I think we need to discuss this because it's very important. I just bought a Pixel Fold. It's a $1,700 Google phone. And one of the insane things about Google when you buy a phone through Apple is number for support. And I think that's the problem with social media. Unless you're a big spender on social media, you don't have anyone to call. If you have a dispute with Twitch, which is owned by Amazon, Twitter, which is now owned by Elon Musk, who the hell do you call? And I think that's been kind of a small silent revolution that people my age think it's normal. But if you go back 25 years ago, if you could imagine, spending $10,000 a month on a platform and not being able to call anyone when something goes terribly wrong, that's a big deal.
Hey, David, it's not just that, Nick, as you know, because I can definitely speak about it because we've had this issue. It can also be existing in some of the social media print platforms, because I know that just recently Nick was alluding to Pod TV Chatter, and we were doing that through GoDaddy and WordPress and a number of other kind of platforms. And yes, trying to find customer service, as Kim found out, is not always that easy and all along those lines, because it is very difficult, and a lot of times it takes forever to get them to answer you, if they ever answer you. And I think we ran into something similar. You can correct me if I'm wrong, with even Roku itself, Nick. So I think that we've run into times where it is difficult to find the customer service people to actually address the issues and all along those lines. But that's definitely something that I have heard people say a number of times.
It's
Can't
a race
believe
to the bottom.
The Angry Geek has actually showed up.
I just saw the. I'm sorry for interrupting. I don't have that much time. I just saw the invite now. Just got back from Terracon. Wait till you guys see the footage of this stuff. I was on stage with Freddy Krueger himself. I was on stage with Bishop from Aliens. You guys know him from a bunch of other movies, Mr. Lance Hendrickson. The girls from Nightmare on Elm Street. The girls from Halloween. Pro wrestling legend Mick Foley. I am exhausted. So I just happened to be here at my day job. I looked at the phone and I was like, holy cow, I got a meeting. Click. Here I am. But
we appreciate you popping in. The show is doing great. We've been getting your shows up on a regular routine and all of that. But I did have a question for you based on one of those shows that we just recently aired, because they are a icon and all along those lines. But what was it like meeting the queen of the vampire world, that being Miss Elvira, and all in that space? So
I really can't show you where she kissed me, because we are PG-13 right now. She was an absolute. Look at Nick laughing at me. This is why you guys keep me around. I mean, I'm not. I am
I'm
not.
no
political. I am
disturbed.
me. I am 100% me. I'm having fun. And David is like, who the heck is this guy, brother? Stick around. You'll find out who I am. Boom! I tell you, Cassandra Peterson is an absolute doll. Elvira herself. Oof. Shivers up and down my spine. She was beautiful. Now, she was only at the convention for 2 days, just 2 days with us. But the time I got to spend with her is unbelievable. Hopefully, I get to see her again in just a couple weeks. I'll be back on the road at Rhode Island Comic Con. You guys should really come up here for this because it's going to be a blast. I will be there for 4 days. Convention's 3 days. I'll be there for 4. I will be on stage rocking and rolling. But to be next to her, to be there next to this gorgeous woman was just unbelievable. And I highly suggest that you guys get to hang around with Kim. Come on, I'm jealous. I just get to see her online. You guys get to hang around with Kim. But hey, I highly recommend it.
Hey, Jacoby, is there an Elvira video game? I think there's got to be an Elvira video game out there somewhere.
There's pinball machines. Hey, Rick, how you doing? I just see you there. There are pinball machines of Elvira, and she has every single one of them. But there's no video games yet. There's a cartoon in the works, so she tells me, and I think she mentions that in the video that I sent to you. And she's also got that new book coming out. So yeah, check out the video, man. Go to podtv.com, see the video. Go to Hulu, go to Amazon, look it up. It's there. You guys can find it. Go and watch it. Watch the Angry Geeks. Tell them to put it on demand, and you can see it.
Just
Yeah,
to point
I
out,
don't
there
think
actually
the show has
is
been
an Elvira video. There is an Elvira video game.
There is. You're the video game expert. I'm just an idiot with a hot chick.
I just put the link there if you wanted to check it out. It's $5.99.
Oh, look at that. Does she? Yeah, she owns the rights to everything Elvira. I mean, she is out there. If you go back and watch the interview, everything. She owns everything, the rights to everything, and she has a lot more stuff coming out. So just wait and see what she got cooking.
Hey, I got a question for everybody here, and it's actually somewhat based on what we've been talking about, but I'd love to hear folks' thoughts about this. And I'm glad you're here, Mr. Angry Geek, all along those lines. But you also, David, the reason I was not on the economic show is I was at one of those lovely focus groups that takes place and everything. And it was actually about Durham, and it was about the marketing of the city of Durham and all along those lines. So it was actually a company out of the West Coast that was doing the marketing study and everything, because the woman said that it was 9 o'clock when we were getting done with the meeting from 8 to 9 and all in that space. And one of the things that is Durham, and apparently we've retired this, Jacoby, I didn't know this, but apparently we used to be the city of medicine, and some people have retired because even though we have hospitals and all this, maybe there are places that have more hospitals and all along those lines. So how important is it for whether you're Facebook or whether you're Pod TV or anybody to have these kind of slogans, and how accurate are these slogans? Because apparently we have retired, as I learned in this meeting, and I don't know if the person was 100% accurate, the city of medicine. But how important is it to have these slogans and this kind of accuracy thing going on in the space of the slogans? Anybody? David, you're the first one who's here, and you're in that media lane. So what are your thoughts about the accuracy of slogans?
I mean, I think it's good. It's sometimes limiting, though. I mean, I'm never going to forget Angry Geek's name because, but, now he's the Angry Geek. What if one day he decides to become happy? Durham.
I'll always be the Angry Geek. I will always be the Angry Geek. I'm the man with the power. I'm the tower of power. I'm too sweet to be sour. I am funky like a monkey, brother. I will always be. That's why these guys keep me around, because I am the man of the town. That's right.
So he's living up to
always
his,
something to say.
He's living
I
up to his
wined and
name.
dined with kings and queens, but I ate pork and beans in back alleys, brother. I will always be the Angry Geek.
Okay,
He hasn't
great
been
lyrics.
banned.
And with that, I gotta go. I gotta go to make sure people are working here in the shop. I love you all. Nick, I gotta get you on the show. Mark, the girls miss you. Rick, it's always good to see you. And Mr. McDuffie, I gotta be back on your show, brother, and I gotta go. But
All right.
I'm
We'll
sorry
see
for
you,
Ricky
Mr.
Mayhem,
Geek.
but that's what I do. David, great to meet you. See ya.
Bye-bye.
So I think
Bye,
we live in
Toby.
an era now where we have a presidential candidate named Vivek Ramaswamy. So, we live in an era where, you can have a complex ethnic name, things are easier to remember. It's really easy to remember when someone's name is John Smith or Juan Garcia. right? And it's really easy to remember now. You told me City of Medicine, but there's drawbacks to that, right? A lot of times back in the day, news anchors had fake names. In fact, a lot of the people you still see on TV, that's not their name. You'd be shocked. It's probably about 10 to 20% of people you see on camera. So fortunately, I have an easy enough last name where I didn't have to change it. But yeah, it's hard, right? Like if you call Durham the City of Medicine, are you negating the fact that, Duke is there? Is it a city of education? It's also the research triangle. Isn't it the city of research? So I think it's a complex issue.
Any
You
thoughts,
see in
Toby?
politics, Republicans are better at branding. In the previous hour, we talked about the estate tax. The Republicans rebranded it as the death tax and used that to defeat it. They branded Joe Biden as Sleepy Joe. You need people that only have the bandwidth now for 2 words. So if you can come up with a 2-word slogan, or 3 if they're really short, like Nike's "Just Do It," but it's got to be short.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well,
it's-
apparently we learned Nick. Apparently we learned we're changing the name of our anchor. Speaking to what David just said, because as we learned on World Edition earlier today, Steve Rao is actually not Steve Rao. He's actually Sandeep, and he goes by Deep. So apparently we're going to call him Deep. So it's going to be the World Edition by Deep Rao instead of Steve Rao, even though everybody has known him as Steve Rao for all of this time.
You're making this overly complicated, but I think that what Rick said is true. You have to realize the dumbing down of America is a real phenomenon. People can only handle short phrases and sophomoric ideas. So hence you have this thing, "Make America Great Again," and people can hang their shirt onto that because that's about as much as they can remember or even think about. So. These slogans do make a difference in politics. They make a difference in commercials. I mean, it's just the way it is. And sophomoric arguments tend to win, certainly in politics. Otherwise, you wouldn't see Trump leading in the polls. Because
I made a list over the weekend of the reasons that America's getting dumber. You got 25 million people with long COVID, which can affect your brain. You got metabolic syndrome. You have the aging of America. And I ran this list by my wife, and she said, well, don't forget PTSD from just the last few years. But about a third of the nation is, maybe has propaganda, social media. 100 million Americans are under forces that kind of make their thinking worse.
But to that point and everything, David, you're over there in California. I know you are, Rick, as well. But wasn't there a whole popular genre of a type of movie, a type of horror movie? And there are some people out there that would argue, to your point, Rick, that we may be living in that era, because there are a number of folks that will say that we are living in the era of zombies, that there are a number of walking zombies out there right now and all in that space.
It's a fear of other people being stupid and you being victimized by other people's stupidity. Yeah. And zombies are we've so much zombie product.
Yeah.
They've got another Walking Dead series coming out in the next few months.
Just to point out, the best zombie movie or a movie that deals with zombies or a show that deals with zombies, but they're not actually even called zombies, they're called infected, is The Last of Us. They did it the best way and the most realistic way.
Yep, The Last of Us definitely did that and everything. And by the way, Jacoby, quick question for you, because can a slogan be one that can backfire on you? Because there was a very popular event. I said earlier today that I thought it was 8 years. It might have been even 10 years ago. But here in Durham, speaking of Durham once again, we had this event called Marry Durham. There were some people that took offense at that because they were like, one, how are you going to marry an entire city? Two, you got a minister administering the whole thing. And I do know that some of the religious people were upset about it, even though ironically it got imported. And I think there was even a Marry Durham or a Marry Seattle, and there were a couple of other cities out west that liked the idea so much that they co-opted it and borrowed it from us. I think Portland might have done one, and there were a couple of other ones as well. So can some of these slogans be taken in an offense, even though they're not intended to be offensive, just because people are sitting there going like, you can't marry Durham. That's like religiously immoral.
I mean, we're in a bumper sticker mentality. Nick is right. I mean, the simpler the better. It sells. And yeah, you can have people get mad at one slogan, but then you have people championing that slogan.
Right.
I mean, people can, if it's easy, people are going to fall for it.
The Big Apple.
nuance
New
and
York
everything
named
else.
itself the Big Apple during one of the most wretched times in New York's history. You know, when it was all crack filled and a zillion vacant buildings and just dirty. And, you know, nobody questions the Big Apple.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, I think
So-
and it can bring it. It can actually bring positive vibes
So-
if you have the right slogan. I mean, "Make America Great Again" was a great idea, and he was able to make the presidency of it. And as one of our commentators say on our political show, which is Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5:00 on the Pod TV network, putting a plug in the political show, that he goes, "Trump's going to win again." And he might be right, and so you have
So-
to get ready now for it.
Speaking of the dumbing
presidents.
down, speaking of the dumbing down of America, I mean it's leading that way towards Idiocracy, the great movie of the past. But this right here is our new president coming.
President Camacho on why he's running in 2020. Foe.
Yeah.
Is that you, Jacoby?
What's up, America? Yeah, you beautiful motherfuckers. Thank you for coming. Thank
Oh
you.
man, where'd you get
Thank
this
you.
from?
Okay, now shut the
That's
fuck
from
up.
Idiocracy.
There's something serious. Now, I
Really?
know you're all asking why I came back in time to run for president some more. The future is full. And nobody knows what to do about it. It's okay though. I got a plan. Camacho's got you. I'm running for president some more in 2024. Yeah, that's right, bitches. You all gonna elect me, and I'm gonna fix it now, so it ain't broke in the future. You feel me? You poor prehistoric suckers is focused on the wrong problem, and you out here fighting over oat milk. How the fuck you all fight about that shit when you still ain't made Snakes on a Plane 2 yet, huh? That movie was important, and you motherfuckers dropped the ball. The priorities are out of whack, America. When I'm president again, we gonna stop talking about all that political bullshit, and we gonna get back to what made this country great in the first place. Doing whatever the fuck we want. I'm so wound up, I feel like Marty McFly. I keep looking at my hand, waiting for it to disappear. And everyone's stressed in 2023. Relax, America. All right, let's take some questions.
President Camacho, what's your take on
Okay, motherfuckers, enough with the dumb questions. I gotta roll. There's a Rocky Marathon on TNT today, but you are all invited to my official campaign launch party this Monday night at Banger's Sausage House. I like the sound of that. My boy Thundercats gonna play, and we gonna party like it's 25-24, man. All right, vote for Macho, and peace the fuck out. Let's ride.
That's your new president and all of
And
that.
paid
I
for
love
by
it.
Rondo Incorporated.
And Brondo brought you the commercial. You gotta love
So
it.
yeah, that is actually what we are at now.
Well, so
See,
President
it's probably gonna
Zelensky,
be taken off Facebook and YouTube.
President Zelensky of Ukraine was a comedian and an actor, and he portrayed being the president of Ukraine before he was elected to be president of Ukraine. And he's done
Yeah.
a good job.
Yeah,
He's
then
done a
there
good
was
job.
couple of- I mean, Jesse Ventura was a wrestler. There was a number of other ones. It was mayor up there. I mean, governor is what I'm correct.
How about Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator.
Yeah,
Governor
Donald
now.
Trump was a reality TV star.
totally.
That's
I mean,
true.
but a
Reality
question
TV.
for you, David. Well, a couple of things. Well, I'll get to the other one first. But there was a candidate that came from a city that you know very dearly. I think he started to run, then he dropped off. Since we talk about it briefly here on the media show, what the heck happened to Frank Flores? And did you think he had a chance whatsoever? Because it was like the world's fastest campaign that I've ever seen. Because, like I said, he popped over there and said, "Yes, I was the mayor of Miami. I'm going to be the president." And next thing I turned around, he's like dropping off and everything. So what happened?
So I have a bias here. They're family friends of ours. So Francis Suarez is the mayor of Miami, and he ran a very short-lived presidential campaign. He raised money in a very exotic way, where if you gave $1, they gave you a $25 gift certificate back. You know, the man is clearly very gifted. He speaks very well. I think he was a little bit ahead of himself, and his campaign fizzled out quickly. But, you know, a lot of times in this environment, you have to run a few times before you actually, you know, get on the radar. So he went to Iowa, you know, he did a little bit, but, you know, as much as positive PR is coming out of Miami, there are a lot of issues. I remain a Florida resident. I spend a lot of my time over there. And despite this narrative you hear about free Florida and our economy booming and whatnot, it's actually, if I had to say it, and this is going to sound crazy, Florida has a lot of the same problems that California does. So maybe that will make everyone's head blow up, but we have lacking affordable housing, we have infrastructure issues, we have, you know, natural disaster readiness issues, et cetera, and we seem to be lost in the culture war. And unfortunately, Francis Suarez didn't stick out because, you know, if you talk to people in Miami right now, rents have risen about 50% in recent years. And that's really what's top of mind, not really, you know, that hedge funds are now on Brickell. We don't really care. We really are bread and butter people. You know, most of us are foreign extraction. We're the second most foreign city in the world in Miami after Toronto. So we came to chase a dream, and now we're getting priced out.
Hey, just really quickly, and I did see your hand raised, Rick. But if you were to, that was like the opposite Chamber of Commerce for Miami. But if you were to play Chamber of Commerce for Miami and for San Francisco, what would you say are their beneficial things in those cities and everything? So, like I said, you did the opposite Chamber of Commerce. But what would be the positive Chamber of Commerce statement for your two cities?
Well, it depends on what age group you're in. If you're a baby boomer, like there is no better place than Florida, talking about asset protection, talking about a great place for quality of life, great weather, recreational opportunities, connections to places in the Northeast, et cetera. Miami is like the capital culturally and economically of Florida, and it's a great place to be once you've already made money. On the other hand, Miami is not an appropriate place for a technology firm, for a financial firm, et cetera. And people are learning that the hard way. Elon Musk learned that the hard way when he tried to relocate all his engineers to Austin, Texas. Texas, also a place I've lived, I like very much. No offense, Texas, but you are not the Bay Area. And it's going to take many, many years to get that talent pool that the Bay Area has. The same way Atlanta is not a competitor to Los Angeles. You can film certain things in Atlanta, but it will never have the ecosystem that Los Angeles has in our lifetime. So you have to really be realistic when you are a business and relocating your headquarters, as we read about it, because it's not as easy as it looks.
Miami's slogan: you're going to see a lot of butts. We wear nothing but thong bikinis.
Hey, that's our culture, Rick. You're attacking my culture.
Hey, Jacoby, along those same lines, I said I was in that meeting, and by the way, I did mention the esports and the esports imports and everything. But if you were going to play Chamber of Commerce for the city of Durham, how would you say it was the assets and all along those lines?
Play. What do you mean?
Like you're going to give the positive aspects of Durham. Somebody doesn't know Durham, you're going to tell the positives of Durham.
Oh, there's a lot of positives of Durham. Durham is the forgotten one. Durham is the hidden child that nobody really talks about. Everybody, well, that only talks bad about, but doesn't really live there. So Durham has, in terms of food, the different unique food choices and the amazing chefs that are here. Music wise, Durham is a very, very small New Orleans or very, very small New York base where you have all different types of music from rap to jazz, musicians that come out of here. We haven't hit the theatrical base. We've hit the sports base. We are the sports capital right now of basketball. That's left out of the New York area because we still have Carolina and Duke, even though they're on down years. So you still got the basketball capital. We don't really have football. NC State's the best football. NC State doesn't have quarterback, but Carolina and Duke are coming on board. They have a better football program. In terms of baseball, we are the #1 town for baseball in North Carolina because of the Bulls. And we have a lot of stuff to offer. Because
Let me do Los Angeles. Los Angeles, the sun always shines, and you're going to get to make out with a celebrity. You'll meet them at the CVS, and then off you go.
I mean, I'll be out there actually by you, Rick, at the beginning of October. We're going to visit my sister out there.
So drop me a thing, and we'll go out.
Yeah, I'll hit you up because
He'll introduce you to a
Right.
celebrity. He'll introduce you to celebrity Toby.
Or I'll
So,
take
David,
you to the
what
CVS where you might see.
David, what prompted you to San Francisco? I mean, what's the deal in San Francisco?
Well, you're going to love this story. And in fact, I've been waiting for someone to ask me. So basically, my husband and I were upwardly mobile. We do remote work. We can kind of live anywhere. It was kind of time to go back to Florida because that's where I'm from and that's where I really prefer living. And we really looked at the options there. And San Francisco's a bargain right now. All that negative PR around what's going on here, we got a great deal on an apartment. They take security very seriously here. I feel safe here. There's a perimeter, the security guards, the cops show up in 2 minutes because, a lot of times the narrative is behind reality. And right now the pricing for real estate here is very depressed. So it's very affordable and you'll never hear that again, right? So this is a very unique era. I have room here for my home studio that I did not have in Los Angeles or in Miami for that matter. And we're experimenting with it. I'm trying to relocate here permanently early next year, but it's affordable, it's walkable, there's lots of work, and there's lots of people my age and lots of culture.
Hey, David, along those same lines, did you ever consider either Atlanta or Durham? Because I've heard both of those cities being referenced as the LGBTQIA capitals of the South and everything. So I don't know if you agree with those assessments or not, but I have heard that put out there for both Durham and for Atlanta.
Well, when I was a young man 20 years ago, Atlanta was where CNN was. Everyone forgets that, right? CNN being in New York is actually a very recent thing. Ted Turner, the founder of CNN, put it in Atlanta. And because I'm from the Southeast, I always imagined I would live in Atlanta. Atlanta is the biggest city. That's where the Federal Reserve, regional bank is. That's where CNN was located, Coca-Cola, et cetera, a sports capital. So I always imagined myself living in Atlanta. I love Atlanta, but, through the oddities of life, Mark, I ended up somewhere else.
Understood. Yeah,
I mean,
like
you
I said,
come on down to Durham, Dave. Hey, it'd be fun because truthfully, yeah.
Well, Florida and North Carolina, we have a weird relationship, right? Because
True.
the default vacation for North Carolinians or Floridians is to go to your state, right? So how many times around you? And then we all have this weird resident exchange. Have you guys ever noticed when someone leaves Florida, they go to North Carolina? And when someone leaves North Carolina, they go to Florida, like Nick?
It's wild. It is wild.
The other thing is that ironically, those two states were in, until we got into this whole notion, this comes back to media, of government not supporting a very important part of the media, which is tax credits. Both North Carolina and ironically Florida, but more ironically North Carolina, were fighting for third or fourth for the film industry because it was going to be Los Angeles first, New York second, and then it was like a battle between Florida and North Carolina. And then, of course, with Tyler and several others, Georgia kind of like pushed both folks out of the picture, and then New Orleans joined the fray, and a number of others joined the fray. And part of that was because of those lovely tax credits that we decided to get rid of and everything. So there's not as much of a reason to come down to North Carolina. But there was a time that we were battling you head to head in terms of North Carolina and Florida in the film industry. And all of that.
Vancouver, New Mexico now.
In the film industry and in the tech industry, because at one point RTP was rivaling Silicon Valley. Right. But then RTP, that bubble burst, and then the RTP caved, and then the supermajority hit in North Carolina. What was it? About 8 years ago, and that's really what started really attacking the film industry. Because even now they're still trying to battle. Oh, why do we need it?
Yeah,
well, right now in Florida, we're seeing everything go backwards too. The biggest development, because I focus on this, is that Disney was basically going to move part of its headquarters from Burbank, California to Orlando, Florida, around the corner from a house that I used to own. Unfortunately, I sold that. And they've actually backtracked because of that whole war with DeSantis. And no matter what you think about that, I don't really care to go into that. Like, it's devastating. Those were 1,000 high-paid jobs. And if you know anything about Florida, we are not the Research Triangle. Okay, even, people say, oh, it's the South or whatever. No, Florida's extra special for our lack of job quality. So when a company, a Fortune 50 company like Disney, decides not to move 1,000 high-paying jobs to the region, it's super devastating.
Yep. Hey, just really quickly, and this is for you, Rick. One of the other things I would come back to labeling and everything, because like I said, that conference or that little thing that I was part of, the focus group, was quite interesting because there was a gentleman there that was talking about how Durham historically had this notion of being kind of a gritty and weird town and everything. So I just wondered, is that something that towns should focus themselves on? Because Durham had this reputation. There was other cities. I think Seattle was one. There were a number of other cities that kind of prided themselves on their weirdness. They kind of like got a little bit of a
All right,
kick
so
up in.
there are Baltimore, Detroit. If you combine grittiness plus tax credits, you will get productions going there. The last season of Justified was in Detroit. So yeah, sure. If you've got a rough city, then get your legislature to give a 40% tax credit to people who come in. Albuquerque. I grew up partially in Albuquerque, wretched town. But now just paradise for productions because tax credits.
A generation of us only know Baltimore for one of the greatest TV series to ever come out, The Wire.
Yep, that's very true and everything. But you tell me, what is your take on that? Because like I said, when it was actually Costa, I think it was the name that the person that brought it up and everything. But he was definitely priding our kind of having this gritty kind of flavor, this what kind of weird flavor and everything. So, and I know that you've definitely done some great work with the Bulls, and the Bulls even play into that weirdness to some degree.
So, I don't think for Durham itself, it's not like a weird flavor or talking about a weird flavor. It's about a uniqueness and a family, a family unit and a community of one. And that's what all Durham tries to thrive on, because that is, for example, in the baseball community, growing up, the Bulls was the center of town, and it still is now. There's still areas within Durham that, that we rally around food stuff. With Saltbox, which is one of the nationally known restaurants coming out of Durham. I mean, it's not a national chain or anything, but it's just a Durham restaurant where a gentleman really is the man is a genius in working, being a chef. The music, that's why Big Daddy Kane had his uncle in my neighborhood, and that's why he came through the neighborhood all the time. You still have Ninth Wonder who camps out here. You still have the Marcellus brothers who teach at Central. You still have is it Play from Kid and Play who also teaches at Central as well. He's an adjunct professor or something. So you have
David
you have
get a kick out of this. David would get a kick out of this. There was a major hip hop artist, and he moved here to the South. He originally moved to Henderson, which is one of our rural towns, and I think he's now here in the what we call the Research Triangle Park. But Terminator X actually moved down here, and part of the reason he moved down here, David, is because he wanted to raise ostriches. So he literally moved from New York down here to start an ostrich farm, and all along those lines. So don't think about ostriches in the middle of North Carolina, but apparently we have ostriches, and he wanted to raise an ostrich farm.
And then the same gentleman the same architect who helped build the African American Heritage Museum, based out of Durham. He passed away, but yeah, based out of Durham. Then you have, you just got a lot of stuff, and Durham was all about, hey, trying to be that larger, that growing town that still wants to stay small, in the mindset that, hey, we know each other and trying to work with each other. So
that was our infomercial for Durham, North Carolina. We don't know.
Since we're doing infomercials, I do need to let Jacoby give an infomercial for the Durham Bulls, who are apparently in first place and might be taking it to the championship, even though they've only got a 2-game lead, and I think there's 6 games to go, and they're all away games. So we need y'all to hold on and win those games, or at least win most of them.
Yeah, we should be able to take it home. Go ahead, Rick.
In general, there's going to be a diaspora of the entertainment industry. LA is going to get more and more wretched to live in, and people in entertainment are spoiled babies, and they won't want to live in a place that has like 50, 100-degree plus days a year. So, and with telecommuting, with everything, when you look at a Marvel movie, 10,000 people worked on it, and in probably 50 different countries.
Right.
And that's going to continue. So a lot of business will move up to Vancouver, any place that gives tax credit. If I were Oklahoma, I would start offering tax credits because you can buy a 5-bedroom house in Oklahoma for $120,000. And so, if, cheap real estate, tax credits, studios will set up shop wherever they want.
Hey, Rick, I saw
And
something,
that's
Rick,
one
I know
reason
we're
people
winding
are
down, but I
moving
did see
out of
something
San Francisco.
scary really quickly because I know we're winding down, but I did see something really scary, Rick, and everything. Because usually when you look at the blue industry, they're mostly folks in their teens and 20s and everything. And I did see that there were some stars in that industry that are in their 50s and their 60s. And I'm going like, I don't know if you want to be hanging out with people in that age range, but you worked in the industry, in the strip industry and everything. So maybe some of your cohorts are still in the game and everything. So are there still some folks that are stripping in their 50s and 60s?
The male stripping thing is women don't really like male strippers because most of them have a loser at home. Like guys can walk into a strip joint and see an 18-year-old girl stripping and be like, oh, well, I could take care of her. I'm a manager at Applebee's. I can afford to, bring a wayfish, stripper. But like a woman is like, no, I've got an unemployed jerk on my couch. I don't need like this guy, even though he's got good abs.
So, Dave, now you see why we got kicked off of these other places. Mark started stripping, and now he's asking Rick where he can strip again.
Yeah,
But no, if you can advert, like, yes, as a novelty stripping telegram, if somebody's having a retirement party and they want to hire a senior stripper, yes, that's something where you could get a few jobs a year.
We got kicked off all the best media platforms. And with that, we're going to end the media show. Thanks to our viewers in the United States of America and, of course, around the world, and especially Brazil. And we'll see you next week on the media show. Until then, have a good week. Bye-bye.